Triangling over. You know, and out of necessity,
Right.
you know, out of necessity. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but it's like when you run a school, you know, and if you don't have the financial wherewithal and the backing and all that stuff to have, you know, to delegate a whole ton of stuff to people, you have to learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so that's been my thing for a long time now. Bootstrapping just about everything. So I mean, and it's good because when you do reach the point where you can delegate and even pay people to do stuff for you, then you know when they're doing a good job because you've done it
Right.
yourself. You know what I mean? It's like I imagine it's like training people. It's like training people to be an instructor. You know, and you invest a whole lot of time and energy in that, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, right? As you well know, right? So but you have to be there and go through it yourself a little bit, and then okay, all right. So I think we're good. Okay, I think we are back live on Facebook. Let me see. How much time do you spend on Facebook, Sifu Andy? A whole lot.
Oh no, more than I'd like, you know.
Yeah, I know exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
By necessity, and just because I feel like I have to be the I mean, I feel it's important for me to be sort of a lighthouse in the fog, you know, at this point. There's so much disinformation and people out there just cowboying it, you know.
Right.
I mean, I just every day I you know will search Jeet Kune Do on Google, and you know, or in YouTube or whatever, and all kinds of stuff pops up, and it's just all over the place. So, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I spent about an hour today on our mutual good friend's website, Chris Kent Jeet Kune Do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because don't ever tell that guy that I said this, but man, what a font of accurate information, right, in the Jeet Kune Do world. You know, like you're talking about being a lighthouse, right? That guy, I swear, it's the proverbial. Every time I go to his website, like I swear, it's like I didn't see this before. Where did this come from? And I have told him that I wish I could write as clearly as he does about Jeet Kune Do and then transform that into speech. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, no, Chris is very good at verbalizing, and you know, he's a great teacher.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely, you know, and that's the thing. It's, you know, it's like George Orwell was afraid we would, you know, his paranoia was that we would be victimized by the lack of information, you know, and be shielded from a lot of stuff. And Aldous Huxley's fear was that we would be overloaded with information and we wouldn't be able to tell what's right and what's wrong. And that's sort of the case now, you know.
Yeah.
There's just so much noise out there, you know, even though there's you know, many still people that are legitimate and are doing the right thing. There's a lot of people out there that are just, you know, either in it for money or whatever reason, you know, just not for the right reasons, for their ego, or maybe they're trying to do the right thing in their own heart, but you know, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. So,
well, I mean, have you thought about is there a solution? What the solution could possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, you know, people try to police it and people form organizations and all that kind of stuff. And I think forming some sort of a federation of people that are of legitimate, that's kind of what I've tried to do with my affiliate program. But, it's definitely going to become more of a problem. I think, it's becoming more of a problem. There seems to be, it brings me to another topic of, the arguing over what Jeet Kune Do and what isn't, and the physical aspects of it, when, we're missing the largest part of the message, which is the philosophical message. There's such a small, minute part of our lives where we're physically capable of doing those things. And, Bruce died in the prime of his life, and he hadn't begun to feel himself get slower, feel himself get older, and now that I'm 20 years older than I've lived 20 years longer than he has. It's, right. I'm there too, I mean, I in my mind, I think I'm going to get back to the same shape I was when I was in my 20s, but the mileage on my body is just, that's a whole story. So, but I think again, he would have made that transition to the wise master, but that's what we were left with, was this him at his brightest, and so of course that's what we talk about. But I think we kind of missed the mark if we just focus on the physical. And of course, he said himself, if you argue over the name, then you don't get it really. So, or
that's true.
This or that.
That's true. Talking about that, this is I've taken to asking people this from time to time. How do you differentiate? Let's see. Yeah, and you'd be the perfect person to answer this. Do you differentiate between Junfan Gungfu, Jeet Kune Do, and Junfan Jeet Kune Do? I'm trying to put them in like chronological order, right? Do you make any distinctions between them?
I mean, Junfan Gungfu is the system, a curriculum that you can reproduce and teach people. Jeet Kune Do is a, vehicle for self-expression. It's a tool to, to self-actualization, or to explore yourself, right? Just to the briefest way I can put it. But, it's a way to find your flow, in life, or do what you really love,
But does that?
But it can't be taught or standardized.
Okay.
So, the fact that people are saying they're teaching Jeet Kune Do, I mean, again, I have a big problem with it too, because, Bruce didn't mean that didn't think he was going to die. Right. And so we're left with Kune Do being this, buzzword for everything he did. And I don't think most people, if they know Jeet Kune Do, don't even know what Junfan Gungfu is, So, not to say the martial artist, but the general public, right, might have heard of Jeet Kune Do, but wouldn't know what Kung Fu is, So, I mean, I feel like my dad taught Jeet Kune Do. I know Sifu Dan does, but I think there's only a qualified group of people that are able to do that, because in a lot of ways it died with Bruce. It was even if you think you can recreate that, stand the mind that the man had and the physicality that he had, like none of us can do that, we can do our own thing, but we can't be him, right? I mean,
right.
Like for the normal human, I back in the day, in the early days, Chisao, for example, right, it was a lot of forward energy, and then he met Kareem and said, well, that's not really the focus of things anymore, which he really felt was. And because of that, the way that we teach it in class a little bit is different. We probably don't teach it with as much forward energy. We try to teach I'm a big believer in, if you can use force and strength, you should also be able to use sensitivity and other things, right? So you should be able to do, you're better off if you can do both. But so Jeet Kune Do, or Bruce's way, became more movement oriented, right, so that he could fit in with other things, and that was a big realization for him. But for us, we don't really have to change that much, because I'm probably never going to meet or deal with someone who I'm looking at their navel. I mean, I hope not. If I do, I'll probably just run away if I can get away. But so, again, a lot of the things that were true for him, I think, aren't true for the rest of us. But I just think that, again, we can use his example as a guide, right? And I think that's the most important thing. And it's just, it's semantics a lot. And, everybody has a different feeling about it. I think that's great. I think at least we're talking about it, I mean, I think that's the positive thing.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I think that, there's a level of intelligence that a person has to possess in order to have a sensible discussion about Bruce Lee. Because like you were saying, he died at age 32. So I see a lot of people in their discussions of Bruce Lee, they do a lot of what I call projection. And they use a lot of what a guy named Glenn Yee, Paul Vunak's student, introduced to me as presentism. It's like they project what they would like to see onto Bruce Lee and say, yeah, he might have done this, he might have done that. Or when they start talking about Bruce Lee, they talk about him with a present day mindset instead of trying to picture how things were for him in the 60s and 70s and why he might have said what he said or thought the way he thought. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I find there's so much of that going on. So your dad, when Bruce Lee started using the term Jeet Kune Do, he was in Los Angeles, so he'd been out of Seattle for a number of years. How did he keep your dad in the loop, so to speak, about what was going on and the developments in his approach and his way of thinking?
Yeah, letters, he wrote a lot. So we'd write a lot of letters, and he was sharing, books and curriculum notes and different things. But, every time he would come back to Seattle for whatever reason, whether it was, to visit Linda's family or whatever reason they were here for, they would get together, and he would keep him up to date on what he was working on. And, also my own development, because he was more steeped in the Wing Chun based, old school Dingbo, and so I think for, and according to the notes he sent, he wanted him to be able to move better, right? To be able to move freely and in different directions and be able to kick from all angles and put things together, which are, obvious. But I think that's, I think he was, trying to keep him up on everything, obviously. So, and you had 3 people running your schools, obviously you would want them to, but I think my dad, really had a lot of good time with him. Obviously he was in LA and running around Hong Kong and stuff in the last couple of years and doing a lot, but they were still talking regularly and, just as close. So he was definitely, in on the way that Bruce thought and where he was going. And, he was famous for, not just my dad, but telling other people, what he was doing next and what his plans were. And if one thing failed, he just moved on to the next. He didn't focus on that, or let that be a stumbling block.
What about your dad's relationship with James Lee down in Oakland? What was that like?
James, I think if he'd been around a bit longer, it would have been, more for me to get. But, my dad never had anything but good things to say about James. And of course, I don't remember if it was because they came up here. I think it might've been when my dad went down to California for one of the Ed Parker things or something. But, Bruce had them spar a little bit and work out together and stuff like that. So I think it was, again, I think he liked to match to, like his earlier students against his later students, just to see, what, because my dad was obviously more steeped in the Wing Chun, but then James had a huge, very deep and wealthy background in the Chinese martial arts and other, many other styles and stuff. So, I think for him, it was, a lot of that was experimental, he would tell my dad, do this with James, let's see how it goes or whatever, and for him, it would be like, okay, that was the old me, maybe sparring against somebody who has a little more of the new me in them or whatever, just for example, I'm just, making up a story, but.
I wonder if, because that story you just told reminds me a little bit of, did you ever hear that Sifu Dan, when he had 2 LA schools, that one school, they focused for a period of time on the sparring, and the other school focused on the drilling. And then he had like a sparring competition. Have you ever heard that story?
No.
Yeah, right. He had a sparring competition because his experiment was to see, right, if you drill realistically versus if you spar, is there a huge difference? And I asked him about the results, and he said that there was no clear-cut distinction between who could perform, right, based on what you had prioritized as the training method, right? And so to me, the message I got from that was, okay, make sure that whenever you drill,
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. There's a lot of solid answer there, just because, yeah, everybody has a different attitude. Some people,
yeah,
I've met a lot of boxers that, talk about the killer instinct, and, there's the discussion of whether or not you can teach or, nurture the killer instinct, or if you're just born with it, I think we all have that, I think we all have that mothers have that capability of protecting their children, and, you see it in the animal kingdom. So it's certainly, we're all capable of that as human beings. It's just interesting, there's so many different factors in that, but like you say, will, and each person's particular composition of their makeup of a human being, how they are.
Yeah.
So it sounds like something you might have got from Bruce,
Yeah, right. That's right. So when you said that, right, that's what I thought of that instantly, right? And but I wanted to share this with you, because when I started thinking about the types of things that I would ask you and what have you, I got a sense that you today and your dad before you have zero interest in the attention that is sometimes thrust upon you because of your unique position in the history of the martial arts world. That's my sense of the two of you. Am I on to something? Am I dead wrong or whatever?
No, I think so. My dad was very humble about that. He didn't like to be he would only agree to speak and do things because he could talk about Bruce, and keep his friend's memory alive. And
yeah,
I kind of same way, I don't particularly think I show up on camera well, or speak particularly better than other people, but I feel it's my responsibility, that sometimes we have to do that, and just to be for awareness and all those things. But yeah, I don't enjoy it. It's hard though, because I want to teach more, and I'd like to be able to tell my dad's story and inspire people through Bruce's philosophy and the life that my father lived. But at the same time, it's hard to think of, like how I would get there, right? Like I often, I've gone through things of opening more of a commercial school, not like, a string of schools, but just advertising more and actually trying to find a bigger space and do that kind of stuff. But every time I go through that process, it just feels weird to me. It feels the only reason I do that is because I'd like to spend more time teaching and learning myself. Right. But
yeah,
ultimately, at least for now, that's just not what's going to be right for me. But, it's hard. I wrestle with that because I want to keep the school alive, and I'm not getting any younger. And so I want to make sure that when I leave it, I have some people that I can, trusted people, whether it's my son or other students, that I can leave in charge, that I know are going to on in the proper way to the next generation. So,
well, that's I mean, in Sifu Dan's book, he says exactly the same thing. That he wants to make sure that there's a lineage, right? That there are people who can continue, and everybody who believes in what it is that they bring into the world, right, has that type of thing. So
like what you said earlier about everybody thinking they're right about one thing or being so sure, that's a big part of, I think, Bruce's philosophy was keeping an open mind, to the fact that you could be wrong.
Oh my God, that's the hardest thing in the world to do.
Or that you're both right in your own way. You just have to accept it. I had the pleasure of listening to a Medal of Honor winner speak at work the other day, Dakota Meyer. He was a Marine, and that was one of the things he said. He recounted, well, he was talking about it, and I went to watch a Joe Rogan podcast that he was on, but he talks about killing someone when he was in Afghanistan, I think. And he said he was, killing this guy with the rock. They got into like hand-to-hand combat. And he said he'd hit the guy 2 or 3 times. And he said, he was like, I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, but at a certain point, this dude looked at me and he knew what was going, he knew I was going to kill him, And he's like, in that moment, I was able to relate to him. Like, this guy's got a family and he's fighting for his country, and he probably believes in his cause just as much as I do.
Yeah.
It was like, in that moment, if I can relate to somebody that I am killing, we should all be able to relate to each other in the world and get along at some level, And that was profound for me, because like when you're in that moment, you're taking another person's life, but you can still identify with, okay, we both think we're right,
Yeah.
Allowing for that in our lives. And I think that's a huge part of Bruce's philosophy. I mean, if he had kept an open mind, it would still probably be in the basement somewhere, but just Chinese people doing it,
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we are arguing about things that are directly related to that. And to me, that again is just missing the point,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it best, where the idea that we could both be right, or you said it earlier, we might have different opinions, but we both think we're right, even though we don't agree on the same thing. And that's I don't see that ever coming to an end in the Jeet Kune Do world. Do you? Do you see that ever coming to an end?
That's just human nature. We see everything through the lens of, how we're brought up and our experience. And, you really can't change that. I mean, you can change people. Bruce believed that, right? I believe that you can change people with thought and empathy and discussion, but certainly not with anger and, dissension and all those kind of things. Because once people's egos get involved and they get angry, then people shut. They're even less open to the fact that, but I've never understood that. I've seen a lot of people go through life and seem really confident. I always wondered if they knew something I didn't, but
well,
I realize now that I'm older that they don't. They just were better at hiding, putting on, But I always question myself, am I right? I mean, the older I get, the more humble I get. If anything, life teaches me that I don't know everything, and I don't understand everything. And, every day is new to me. I try to continually, be a lifelong learner and just try to keep an open mind about things, so.
You just made me think of something else when you talk about confidence. I read something the other day. This guy's theory is that happiness is not a normal human trait or something, and so we shouldn't even strive to be happy. He said that the idea of being happy is like, I don't remember if he called it a social construct or a human construct or whatever, that it's not real, and so we shouldn't even try to be happy. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, I can understand that, I mean, we make a lot of plans around being happy. I heard the story the other day about a fisherman that, goes out every day and he catches one fish and he comes back and eats it on the beach with his family and spends time with them and has a glass of wine and enjoys the rest of the day. And he meets a Westerner who says, well, you should get a bigger boat and go out and, you should catch more fish. Why do you just catch one and come back? And the guy's like, I don't understand. And he's like, well, if you catch more fish, you can get a bigger boat. You can make more money, start a corporation, and then you can have all this money. And the fisherman's like, well, why would I want to do that? And he goes, so you can sit on the beach and have a glass of wine and spend time with So I get it. We spend so much time, like making plans to be happy. We'll be happy in 20 years when I retire. And then in the meantime, your kids are trying to get your attention. You're telling them to fucking, go away because I'm busy working, or I'm doing something else so that I can get to a place in 20 years when I can spend time with you. Mm-hmm. That's living the Tao. That's living Bruce's philosophy is enjoying the ride, man. Live in the moment, be happy. And I guess, happiness is really wrapped up with a lot of, like you said, I can understand why somebody would say that, but, I prefer the more like simplistic, like I think happiness is important. I think we find happiness whether or not you plan for it, or you know, you recognize that feeling in your heart, right? When your heart is warmed, or somebody, you were able to do something, so I'm able to do something for someone, or someone does something for me that really just seems altruistic and makes me feel good, you know, or, you know, just the simple joy from seeing my son, you know, do things as a child or as an adult, you know, or you look at a loved one. I mean, that's happiness. Those are moments of happiness, whether you're a, you know, I mean, we do have conscious thoughts. So, I mean, it's not like a deer or an animal just being out and enjoying the day or something, you know. I mean, we have the ability to really sort of sit with and think about these moments that bring us joy and what that means to us. But
Yeah.
I guess I don't completely agree with that, but I think, you know, there's something there as well. You know, there could be a lesson in that.
Let me ask you this. There's the story that let's see. They asked Bruce Lee. This is a story as I remember. They asked Bruce Lee, Bruce, what's the difference between hard style Gunfu and soft style Gunfu? And he said, not two, as in not TWO, which to me is an indication of the absolute importance of balance and the, let's say, the yin yang theory or approach to everything about Bruce Lee. What do you make of that?
I agree. I would say that that's true. I think that, you know, even the soft styles have hard elements, hard styles have soft elements, but I think that definitely follows the principle of yin and yang, which is, you know, I mean, just again, I was saying something last night, you know, I was teaching Chisao at class and telling someone, you know, you need to be soft yet not yielding and firm yet not hard, right? Like,
Right.
So I think that's, you know, that speaks to that a bit, you know, in that sense. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I
I was thinking about that, and I just realized that. Can you see me still? Because
yeah,
I can see you, but do I look frozen or something?
yeah, you're frozen, but I can still see you. It's okay.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fine then. This will be like there's a guy that has a video channel where you never see you only see his guest. They have a single camera and it's on his guest, and you just hear his voice. So I'm gonna use that approach because I have no idea how to unfreeze my video on Zoom. It's not a problem at all, right? So yeah,
That's my you're frozen either, so it's not, you know, it's probably
I don't care. The technology annoys me. It annoys me that we have to deal with it. So let's go back to the teaching of the art and what have you. So your dad Bruce Lee stayed in touch with your dad, and he would keep him updated and what have you. Did your dad make any innovations himself to what he was doing, or was it always just, if I didn't get it from Bruce Lee, I don't do it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think the fact that he was he was a judoka before, I think, you know, obviously, again, towards Jeet Kune Do, that's more of a strength for him. And so, not that those things didn't exist, right? Like the Osoto Gari and just different things, trips, throws from trapping or from grappling range that Bruce used, right? Because they were all things he did.
Right.
I don't think so. I mean, really, he would always say that we, you know, stick to the curriculum that Bruce left. And, you know, I mean, I remember the only thing outside of the same kind of curriculum we always did was, you know, a couple times, probably 3 times when I was young, Wally J came and visited the club and did a, you know, like a workshop for us. But again, that was part of, you know, Jeet Kune Do or Bruce's system as well, you know, what he was doing, what he was researching. And so no, I mean, and that, again, that's what I really try to stick with, you know, just for preservation. Again, you know, I wrestle with it because I'm crystallizing it, but again, it was the curriculum and the path, right? The foundation that Bruce left for us, right? And I also wanted to bring up too, I listened to James Bishop's podcast with you, and I really liked what he said about Jeet Kune Do being a closed system based on philosophical schools of thought. You know, I thought that was actually the best answer that I'd heard in a long explaining that, you know, that if he lived, it would have been open to interpretation. He probably would have been able to lead us all in a certain direction or tell us, hey, this is how you know, but because he didn't and didn't allow for that, and that was how he left it, that's what we're left with, right? But anyway.
Yeah, I think that Jeet Kune Do ultimately is just his philosophy in action. And his philosophy in action, you know, it's just like I had a little discussion with one of your great admirers, Russell Dulai, and we were talking about whether or not something can resemble Jeet Kune Do, you know, and so because I have a theory that Jeet Kune Do is invisible. You know, a guy does what he does and he does it well, right? And it's like, well, but it looked like boxing. Oh, but it looked like Wing Chun. Oh, but it looked like some kind of grappling system, right? And you go, so where did you get it from? He goes, well, I trained Jeet Kune Do. So I trained to understand it. So Jeet Kune Do becomes invisible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
Well, you even watch, you know, the footage from Game of Death, right? It's a movie, but that was meant to be like his ultimate expression of Jeet Kune Do. And you can see in those scenes, like, you know, I mean, that's what he means when he talks about being able to adapt and respond
and fit in.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like, even though it's, you know, again, it's a script in a movie, like the Hapkido guy will throw him, right? He gets caught with a throw, but then he figures it out immediately how he did it to him, and he does it back to him, you know?
Right. Yes.
I mean, that's it right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
but Andy,
what's
that's the level,
same, right?
That's the level of intelligence that I was talking about that a person has to have, right? When they watch, right? When they watch or they read Bruce Lee stuff. You see?
But you're right, though. It can be confusing. I mean, I would say that just because it's simple and effective, it might not be Jeet Kune Do, but it definitely would fall under the principles or concepts or the umbrella of that philosophy, right? Because it should be simple and straightforward. Right. So whether it's boxing or fencing or Thai boxing or any art, right? Karate, anything, it can be simple and direct, and it could look very much like it. That doesn't mean that it is, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're following the principles, right? If you're in boxing, if you're in any boxing or kickboxing method, you're going to be using attack by combination over and over again, right? So, okay, so obviously at some point things are going to look similar because Bruce Lee didn't create attack by combination. He's probably the first person to observe it and write it down as part of his own, as a realization of his own methodology. You know, but he didn't create attack by combination. He observed it as a phenomenon in the fight world.
Right.
So somebody comes along and does it. I mean, it.
Yeah, again, he innovated things in that way. I mean, again, like even today, like, you know, you'll read. I was reading an article the other day, and it was like it was about Bruce Lee, but it was by fencers, and it was like Bruce Lee was, you know, the most famous fencer. You know?
I like that.
But you know, he took, you know, slips and feints and, you know, bobbing and weaving and all that stuff from boxing, but it's not like those things don't exist in other arts either, you know. But I mean, yeah, he took what he knew he needed and what worked for him, and he was an expert at either watching something or having an experience and then realizing in that moment, you know, that's the hardest thing to do. The greatest fighters, you know, can make adjustments in between rounds when they come back and they go, okay, this is what you need to do. And they go out and do that, or they recognize it while it's happening. You know, hardest thing in life or in a fight is to recognize it in the moment. Like, you know, there's a funny story too that my dad used to tell me. It was about a boxer, and he comes back after like the first round or two and he's just getting creamed, you know, and his coach is telling him, yeah, well, you got to figure out what he's, you know, he's trying to coach him, you know, you got to figure out what he's trying to do to you, you know. And the guy's like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out, but you know, I'm getting there. And then, you know, I'm probably not doing the story any justice, but the punchline is he comes back around later and he says to his coach, I figured out what he's trying to do. He's trying to kill me. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I remember the it wasn't based on like a real event, but it's just like a culmination of observances that the boxer who is a technician is fighting the brawler, and the brawler nails him, and he loses his composure, and he tries to brawl, which is not his approach. So you're going to end up losing. You got to have the composure to make to keep to your strategy, right?
Right. Mayweather's for me a good example of that, because I always wanted to see Mayweather like stand toe to toe with someone and go at it. But that was his strength, is he was elusive and fast, and you couldn't touch him. But if he stood there and let you hit him, anyone hit him, but probably more than half the guys, he would have been knocked out. But he didn't do that, because he didn't have an ego. I mean, maybe his ego was in a different direction, that you can't touch me. But the fact that, you know what I mean, people may have, their fighters definitely be like, come on, stand here, let's go at it.
Yeah. I would say that's definitely the way to use ego, right? if it's gonna be okay, my ego leads me to use my strengths, to play to my strengths, right? Instead of having somebody else upset me and take me off my path. I think that's that's probably the best kind of ego. Do you think it's ego that leads people to, like in the JKD world, like we were talking about earlier, we're going to have these discussions and these disagreements or arguments or whatever, right? What's the role, if you could have a perfect Jeet Kune Do world, what's the role that ego would play? Because I think it plays with some people a pretty negative role right now. So in your perfect Jeet Kune Do world, what role would ego play?
None at all. I prefer left it at the door and didn't, I always tell my students, when you come in, leave your ego at the door, do what you can, and then don't pick it up when you leave, just leave it.
Just leave it.
Need it.
Yeah.
You don't need it, and anyone who makes you feel like that, or if any situation makes me feel like that, or I feel less than something, I know something's wrong. Earlier in my life, I just felt like I was lacking, or I didn't understand, or maybe I was wrong in some way. But now I know, if I get that feeling that something's wrong, that someone else is trying to make me feel like that, or I feel that something's just not quite right, But I don't feel that. I mean, I still have the, obviously we all still want to look good in front of other people. And a bit of our ego is just something that we'll never conquer. We'll always have to fight and be aware of, how is it influencing us? And it's also part of, confidence and other things that are good things as well, But I think the ego and the, I'm forgetting my psychological terms, but, they're always in war with each other, right? It's like inside you, there's, what is it? The Native Americans, indigenous saying,
yeah.
You have two wolves inside,
wolves, right?
And the one that wins is the one you feed, so there's some great wisdom there too,
Yeah. Talking about wisdom, the story, the way I've heard it, is that your dad sent you to Dan and Asano, right? In his wisdom, he thought that Sifu Dan had stuff that you needed to become aware of.
Yeah, I think there was one, I think he wanted to make sure that there wasn't any pieces I was missing. And I think also, I think once he knew that it was important to me that, my father would always do that. We'd always say, there's nothing else I can teach you, which is, and I found myself saying that a couple of times to people. And I then subsequently heard a story about one of my dad's older students who ended up passing away. But he had told someone else that told a student of ours that that was one of the hardest things that ever happened, was when my dad told him, I can't teach you anything else. He was like, that kind of broke his heart a little bit,
Yeah.
And we both agreed, the student and I, who know my father, that wasn't true,
Exactly.
But sometimes you can feel like that. And he was so humble, but I think also it's good, I think you have to at some point send someone out to figure it out, whatever the next steps for themselves. Not that I don't think that it meant that he was never going to be there to be a sounding board for him or all that kind of stuff. I think at that point, it's like, if you want to be a jazz musician, you go to a teacher, they're going to teach you the basics and then tell you, all right, man, you got what you need. Now just riff, do your thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what we should all be doing. But it's nice to have mentors and, role models and people that trusted advisors, whether it's a teacher or someone like that, parent, that you can, bounce things off of.
Do you know Rick Fay?
I do. Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting him before and seeing him again recently. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the way I remember it, Rick says that's what he did with Greg Nelson. It was like there came a time when he was like, okay, in order for Greg to grow, I got to get rid of him.
All right.
So he sent him on his way to do his own thing. And now look at the Greg Nelson that we have.
Well, it's like a father and a son, I mean, even if the son loves and is hanging on his every father's word, eventually you have to tell that child, you got to go out and live life yourself. You can't like, I still want to be here for you and you need to be here for me, but like, you need to go out on your own and experience life, on your own without the shelter of being under my wing or whatever, just because, Yeah. And I think some of that was that for my dad too, was, encouraging me to do my own research and, also, I mean, Dan and him are like brothers, and so it's kind of like visiting family. And also, I think, again, he just wanted me to feel confident and be fully prepared. And, I think there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of not knowing what you don't know, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. But like, for example, someone like Tony Jaa, supposedly who came up watching Jackie Chan movies and didn't realize he was using a wire. He just thought you should be able to do that. And so that's why the guy can do such incredible things, because no one told him he couldn't. It's like Roger's band,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Human beings couldn't break that 3-minute mile until somebody else did. And then everyone else could. It's like, how does that make any sense, But
okay. All right. So I think I just unfroze myself, or my camera unfroze me. Right?
Yeah, moving.
Okay. All right. So now I got it. Now I got to start behaving myself again. I can't drink off camera or what have you. Earlier on, you had talked about changing the format or the structure, because your dad ran a not even a non-profit, well, not non-profit, but a not-for-profit establishment for decades, right?
Yeah. I mean, once, even though once Bruce said this closed the schools, he told my dad he could keep it open as a private club, and collected dues, which he sent to Bruce.
Right.
And then when he passed away, he just didn't charge. So
that's courageous.
Well, he didn't have to, I mean, he was in a position where he made a good living with the store, and we had the basement below it. So he had a place he didn't need to rent, but he did have to pay for insurance and all that kind of stuff. But, for him, that was, he didn't feel then the need to have to take a bunch of students and make his living by them. And he could only take people that he wanted, or that really fit in, or that, he felt were. That's why even to this day, like I'm not easy to get a hold of, but I kind of like to make sure that people really are interested. I mean, so many people will say, I want to come visit a class or see, and you let them come like right off the bat, and then they just never show up again. But the people that you really like, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in, I don't care who you are, but if you want to work hard and be dedicated, then I'll teach you. But the process of vetting that sometimes is just ignoring people.
Yeah. Hey, so we talked about people projecting onto Bruce Lee and what have you, right? So I want you to engage in a little bit of that. So had Bruce Lee lived, where do you think he would have gone? What do you think today, right? The situation with Jeet Kune Do would be?
I'm going to be open and honest today and be vulnerable. So you're going to hear it all. What do I think he would say about the state of things?
Well, no. Where do you think he would have taken it?
Uh, man, you know, so that's impossible really to answer.
Exactly. That's the only real answer there is.
You know,
Right?
I thought of it the other day. I just thought, you know, what if he just became a pacifist?
Yeah.
What if that isn't the way anymore? What if
Yeah.
it was like Forrest Gump, where all those people were following him running? He's like, okay, I'm done running. Where are you going? I'm going.
I'm going home. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Exactly. It would have dawned on him that, you know what? I'm training for this fight that I'm never going to have. And I've wasted the last 20 years of my life trying to perfect my body, which was great. But really, I should have been working on my mind and my relationships with other people. You know, that's what life's about. You know, at the end of your life, when you're laying there, I guarantee you, none of us are going to be thinking about the stuff that we have, you know, a movie that we were in or any of that. We're just going to be thinking about mothers and fathers and God, please give me another moment of life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are not the things that we focus on in times that are hard, you know? I mean, that's just, yeah. But again, you know, it's like that story of the fisherman, right? You can spend your whole life trying to get to a place where you can just do what you could have done in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to what you're talking about, confidence. Not enough people have the confidence to do what their heart and even their mind might be saying, this is the thing to do. You know, I think you alluded to that with the whole commercialization of your approach, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a constant battle, you know. I mean, I think again, you know, as I get older, I mean, confidence for me has been a big deal my whole life because I've fought my weight since I was young, and you know, I mean, we all have kind of trauma in our childhood potentially, or something that we carry with us, whether it's being teased or, you know, my parents were divorced or whatever it is, right? That affects you. And, you know, my worst day is no worse than your worst day. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what happened on my worst day. My lowest point is still the same to me as any other person, right? So I like my pain. I don't have a whatever on it, but you know, a monopoly on it. It's not bigger for me, although sometimes I can feel that like that, you know, for all of us, right? That people don't understand my pain or whatever. But I think again, for me, like even at 50, you know, I'm still try to use Jeet Kune Do, you know, even in work, right? If I'm in a boardroom of executives and my bosses and bosses' bosses, and I feel like I should say something, I get that fear, like, oh, I don't want to be the dissenter. I don't want to be the one guy to say maybe I'm wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, but ultimately I know that I should just say that. And that for me is practicing it in my daily life and just being brave, and you know what I mean? Which is not like I was raised to like be seen and not heard. And of everything my dad went through, I think he raised me with a bit of a second class mentality that I'm still kind of fighting to get over. You know? So for me, that's the everyday challenges and the things that I try to do, but I still fight with that every day. You know, I mean, I you know, I'm 50. I feel like I'm, and you know, again, the challenges that we've been through most recently with my father's passing and the grief that I went through and just everything. It was really difficult for me. You know, it was something where I felt like I wasn't being strong enough. You know, I went right back to work and just, I was already a grind at work and I was totally burnt out. And I just felt like I was, you know, like, why can't I get over this grief? And why can't I get back to normal? And why can't I function like I should be, you know? And I was being really hard on myself, and I didn't want to seek help of any kind because I felt like, you know, who's going to understand what I'm going through? You know, I lost my best friend, my teacher, and my father, who was just an amazing person. And like, you know, I just felt like no one could understand. If anyone, it was the people closest to me, and I was talking to them, but you know, I just wasn't getting any better. I was getting worse. I was in a super dark place. And I think in retrospect, it took a lot of strength for me to say, whoa, I need to take some time off work and I need to seek some help, speak to a professional, you know, whatever that entails. And that was really helped me. I've always been an advocate of counseling and all of those kind of things. But just in this particular case, because of the amount of grief I was going through, and I had that ego about my grief, like no one can help me, like I can get through this myself. I'm
That's
weak
interesting.
if I take time off work, or and I think it took tremendous strength to say I have a problem and I need help, and I don't have the answers. I can't figure it out myself, and it wasn't like, again, in counseling, it's not like they give you answers. It's just stupidly, they ask you questions. You're just
I
like,
know.
or that you can't see in that moment,
Right.
but the
Yeah.
purpose, if you get nothing out of it, then you don't, at least you've tried, and you can walk on from there. But like, for me, that really helped, I mean, it really helped me to put things in perspective. And I guess I just needed someone outside me to say, dude, like, there's no timeline on grief. Like, don't be like, just go through what you're going through, like, it's okay, and I just needed to tell myself it was okay to feel those feelings, and just however long they took, that's what it was going to take,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to somebody today talking about, he said, I hate Alcoholics Anonymous because somebody who has been sober for 20 years still goes to meetings where they make him say he's an alcoholic.
Right.
Right. Like, I mean, so yeah. It's interesting though, because again, earlier you alluded to the fact that we all go through the same kind of stuff. That second class citizen thing, when you said that, that really touched a note with me, because I grew up in an environment where we were told, never think too highly of yourself, because there's always somebody better off than you, as well as somebody worse off than you. So even though it was well intentioned, I think that people who are raised with that type of idea sometimes struggle to find their place, sometimes struggle to find their voice, sometimes struggle to tap into things like ambition, like developing the desire to make something of yourself.
Right.
And I think that's something that can stick with you for a really long time.
Even now at work, like if I don't get a promotion or something, I will tell myself, well, there's lots of bright young people, and the company's a huge pool of, instead of like, man, I'm a unique individual and there's no one in this company do what I do in the way I do. I just need to show up in the right way, right? But it's like, that self-talk and that inner monologue is so important, You
know why that's, right, that's it. You know why it's important? Because you never know who you're influencing around you. And that's what I discovered. I had a colleague many years after I moved to Miami. He and I were on the phone. He had become a station manager at the airport back in Barbados. And we were talking about that. He says, well, he says, Dwight, the secret to my success is I just tried to be you. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I just copied your work ethic when we were workmates. When you left and went to Miami, I just tried to be you, and I ended up station manager. That's why it's important, right? Because you never know. You never know who you're influencing.
It's not so much like the angel thing that it might be an angel, but like my dad always told me that, you should be respectful to people below you, on your level, and above you. And just because you never know how that's going to affect your life or how they're going to come back in. And to me, that means, like, my dad taught me to be a kind of an old school gentleman, and I've tried to be that way. And at like work, I worked where I work now for about 15 years, and I have really good relationships with the people I work with, and I attribute that to being a gentleman,
Right.
And I tell you, never underestimate the power of being a gentleman, dude. It may not come back to you in that moment, but people will remember that. Like even today, I meet people that I didn't like. I was talking to my neighbor kind of a little further away the other day, but I didn't realize he had any interactions or knew my dad. But, he said, your dad was just a really classy guy and a gentleman. And I really,
Yeah.
And that's from someone who didn't even know him in the martial arts realm, just met him in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
So to me, that's, that's the way you leave a legacy too, is the way you treat other people. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, your dad is what I would call one of the old school greats, right? And I think that in this modern era, with all the whiz bang technology and what have you that can take us so far, I think that a lot of people miss out on the old school values. So my podcast on Wednesday, I tried to make the point that in the old days we had a Sihing, that we could go talk to, you know. I try to convey to my students the importance of respecting my seniors. So somebody like Chris Kent, somebody like Cass Magda, my students know how much I value their counsel.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That thing. But that's an old school thing, because nowadays it's like, well, you're old. That's the attitude. You're old. Your way is not the way of today. So, you know, try to keep up or get canceled or whatever the heck it is that they call it.
No, you know, it reminds me of a couple of things, but, you know, it reminds me of the argument that people are better fighters now because we know more and we're more advanced, you know, and I'm a big believer that sometimes the old ways are the best ways, you know, because the old ways were the simple ways, you know. I mean, you didn't, again, it was like Bruce said, you do this and that, you just step on his foot, he'll let you go. It's like, you know, now we got all these contrivances and craptions to set the nail, and so that you don't hammer your finger and all that, instead of just pounding the damn thing in, you know. I mean,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
but again,
Yeah.
about, you know, we know more now, we've had more experience and blah, blah, blah. Well, we really don't know that because there wasn't TV and all that, but I do know for sure that there wasn't TV and as many distractions. So if you were a fighter or a warrior back then, that's all you did. You had all day, no distractions. And then you had real situations to use that. So if you were still alive to pass that on to somebody else, that meant a lot, you know. But I think it's easy for us to just think we know so much now, and we're, you know, it's just like, as you get older, as I got older, I started in my 30s and 40s. I really know what's going on now. Boy, now I know way more than I did in my 20s, and I really didn't get it. But every year I get older, every 5 years or whatever, if I really look and think about it, you know, and that's how it should be. We should be constantly learning and constantly progressing and all these kind of things. But
Right. Yeah.
To your argument, I still kind of think sometimes the old ways are the best ways, you know.
Cool. You know, in the past, when I had my big school, and I would, you know, a young student comes to me and, you know, talks about, I can't get along with my parents and whatever. And I go, well, hold on a second. How old are you? You're 14, right? Okay. All right. Well, I know that's the age at which you all go crazy. But let me ask you this. Your dad's 40 years old, right? Divide 40 by 14. You see, it's almost 3. So he has 3 times as much experience as you do, being 14. He might know something about it. You should go talk to him.
No, exactly. I used to wonder how my dad got so wise. And I remember, wow, I was, you know, a year younger than I am now when he had me. So, you know, didn't have me till he was like 48 or 49. So we had all those years to, you know, get through that, get to the place where he was, you know.
Yeah.
But
here's the thing. When you started to take martial art training seriously, how old were you?
About 15, I think. Yeah, I'd gotten in a couple fights at high school.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. See, so I was explaining.
You know, the fights that I got into, I did really well in because of just playing around and being immersed in it. That was also part of, you know.
Yes. You see, so I was explaining this to my students the other day, and, you know, I've mentioned their names before. I'll mention them again. Chris Kent and Cass Magda, right? Because it only dawned on me. I mean, I've known them forever, but it only dawned on me a couple of weeks ago. Those guys joined Inasano when they were teenagers, right? So if you can still listen to them, right? And not only did they join him when they were teenagers, but they joined him when he was in his mid-30s, right? So how much wisdom do you think there could be there?
Definitely.
Right? So just like you, if you got serious with your dad, right, Taky Kimura at age 15, well, if I want to know anything, I'm going to come to you.
And
right?
being a, you know, I mean, and again, like, I think up until that point, what turned me off was just, again, like, my dad gave his time on this earth to help other people.
Yes.
And sometimes that's hard when you're the son of somebody like that, because you don't understand why he's not giving you his time and why why other things take precedence over you or me. So that, that's the difficult, and I totally understand it now, I mean, my wife complains about it too. She's like, you're, you become your dad, man. Like you're doing stuff for people you don't even know. And, running into Seattle to do this and do that just to accommodate somebody, like, not spending time with your family and stuff. But again, like, that's the balance we all have to have. But I feel a great responsibility to continue to inspire people, and not just people in martial arts, but, people that come to me, because I think there's great value in that. And
well, didn't Bruce Lee say balance is when you run like hell to catch it?
I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
That's a
Right.
good one.
Yeah. So dynamic balance is what is, I mean, and so we got to be in motion, right? So nobody can sit down, right? Sit on their duff and work things out. No, I think you work things out by being in action and being alive and having things happen. And like we were just talking about fighting, right? In between rounds, and it helps if you have a coach that can tell you, right? Here's what he's doing to you.
You're dropping your hand.
Yeah,
right. You're doing that.
Yeah, man. So, all right. So, okay. So tell me what is, because we should start wrapping this up. So tell me what's the plan, right? You started the affiliate program a little while ago. So what are the other plans for what it is that you're going to do?
So I'm going to be putting out a book soon. I've just finished writing it, and
nice.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. It's just a short one, but it's stuff that my father told me, and I think are important things that I want to pass on. The sort of the philosophical aspect of the essence of him.
I dig it.
And then, I mean, I just continue with the affiliate program. I just want to be able to reach people and, so that have, legitimate people that are in different areas. So if you're looking for, Genfan Gungfu, and specifically the Institute, and the original curriculum, that we can provide that for people, because, I can't be everywhere, obviously. And, virtual things are interesting. I've thought about that. It's just, to reach a lot of people, it's just, if I don't need to do it, if it's not like a COVID situation, I'd rather not, just because there's no substitute for being, in person with someone, and then really understanding, what they need as a human being, and what they might need as well.
I think anybody who has the virtual setup should have a once or twice a year in person thing as part of it. You know what I mean? Because
like Guru does. And
I mean, look, it was a necessity during COVID, but man, it sucks.
It is a good thing for people, though, that can't get here or there. But there's nothing or substitute for in-person learning. But sorry, I got off the point there. I mean, for me, it's just, I'm trying to let people know that we are here and where we are, without feeling like I'm commercializing it in some way. I keep into people that either aren't doing research, or end up at other clubs teaching things instead of so I would say that for me, it's just getting out there and try to be more of that beacon, so that if people are looking for Genfan Gungfu or looking for something like that around here, that they can find a legitimate person. So
well, okay, so I stopped using the term commercial, because especially with us in the JKD world, it has such a negative connotation, and I replaced it with professional.
Okay.
So you're not commercializing what you're doing, you're professionalizing what you're doing.
Well, and again, there's a right way to do things in a wrong way. I mean, if I do it to some level, it's not because of ego or money. I mean, there are plenty of other things I could have. If I wanted money, I would have studied to be a doctor for the last 30 years, for Christ's sake. Not music, anything would have been better, Dwight, if I was thinking about making money. But to help people, honestly, and touch people. And I think it's awesome that my dad was able to do it in such a pure way. But he always told me that there's nothing wrong with getting paid for your time and for your expertise. And that's a promise I made Bruce, and you're not held to that. You can do whatever you want. I have faith in you. I trust you. I mean, he wanted me to be the person to carry it on. And,
Yeah. See, and the thing is, I mean, I'm biased, but I think martial art training is one of the best things that you can deliver to people. Because I think martial art training nourishes the entire person, right? Physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, right? I don't, you know, I don't know that being a surgeon necessarily does that in as complete a way, right? So I think this skill, this knowledge and ability that we have, because everybody wants to feel better about who they are on multiple levels. And and I mean, look, who doesn't admire Bruce Lee? So that's our starting point. Our starting point in that we are legitimate descendants, right? I mean, and you more legitimate than many other people, right? Of somebody who has been such a great influence. So it's almost like if you didn't do what you could, you would not be fulfilling, first of all, your own legacy, your dad's legacy, or Bruce Lee's legacy. So you definitely should, as what's his name said to Dan Inosanto, who was Steve McQueen, right? You should do your thing. You know what I mean? For sure.
Yeah.
Man.
What a shame it would be if we didn't, you know?
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, if you want to make any announcements here on the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, now is your chance to do it. You know, tell people how to get in touch with you, where to go, and what have you.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook as Sifu Andy Andrew Kimura. We have the Kimura Clan -jkd.com, which is our website. And those are pretty much the easiest ways. You can email me through there, or just reach out through Facebook, or on Instagram also. It's Sifu Andy Kimura.
All right.
Now,
yeah. I just remembered the last time we were on here, didn't we talk about Tsuyoshi Abe and how we should try to get him on the show?
That's right.
What's funny is that a few minutes before we went live, somebody posted old footage from the Inosanto Academy, and a guy put in the comments, "Oh, look, that's Tsuyoshi Abe right there."
But yeah, it would be amazing.
Yeah. There's just some guys from that damn Inosanto Academy I cannot get my hands on. You know, it is what it is.
Shiyoshi's like that. I keep telling him, you know, like he's the most humble, loyal. I mean, he's just an amazing. He's you know, he's a brother to me, and my father, you know, used to call him one of his sons. You know, I mean, was one of a couple people that he really treated like that. But yeah, I mean, he's an amazing guy. He's definitely my brother. You know, it's been nice. You know, after my dad passed, I was able to come down and visit and work out and see Guru Dan, and that was very healing for me. You know, just to be around, to feel like I was being around family. You know,
it's really interesting. You know, like the coincidences that occur, because so here we are talking about him. 2 weekends ago, I was up in Coral Springs with Helena Coliff, right? The wife of the late Neil Coliff, another great Jeet Kune Do. And we were watching footage from my 1996 Miami seminar, and who's Sifu Dan's assistant? Tsuyoshi Abe. Right? So there's, you know, Andy, we cannot run away from it, and you know, and we shouldn't.
Nor should we. Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
But I appreciate that. You know, I before we leave, I want to leave this with everyone that, you know, I think every day we need to try to be better to each other as human beings, and try to really transcend who it is we think we are and what it is we think we know, in order to better get along with everybody, you know, on this earth. But I challenge every one of you to, you know, be nicer and try to be a better person every day. So
that's what it's about, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on again. And Where's your school again? What city are you in Florida again?
I'm in Miami, but my school is now a small group, right? I kind of semi-retired from running the big school thing. So now I have a cadre of private clients and then a small group that meets outdoors a couple of times, well, yeah, 2 or 3 times a week, actually 4 times a week. And yeah, you know, and
So if
it's
people are
fun.
in the Miami area and they're looking for that or whatever, they can reach out to you, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I get calls from people almost every week, right? You know, you go on Google and you go Muay Thai in Miami, Jeet Kune Do in Miami, Kali in Miami, and I'm gonna show up simply because I've been here forever,
Sure, sure.
right? You know, I got one of the oldest websites, so Google says, okay, this is a serious guy, right? So they
Right.
put me up at the top.
Well, I think, I know your skill is great, but just based on your character, I think anyone would be super fortunate to be able to have you as an instructor. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. See, right back to you.
thanks.
All right. Okay. All right. So again, my pleasure. And feel free, reach out anytime, anything I can do. I'm there for you. All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, man.
Appreciate
You take care.
it. Okay. Bye, Dwight.